All right, thanks for joining the Retro Rockets garage and dropping in. Here we're today working on the old Beetle Bug, the old 1911 CC Type 4 powered Baja. So today we're actually looking at T4 engine development and the evolution of the T4 engine. It's a bit of a data dump, so excuse the blah blah blah, but here goes anyways. And please leave us a like and subscribe to the channel. The YouTube matrix are very difficult, really, if you don't subscribe. And please check out my other videos. I've got a whole bunch of videos on VW, Porsches, aircraft, and other things that roll and go. So check out the Retro Rocket Garage. T4 engine development, 1968 VW 411. At launch, the 411 featured an all-new 1679cc Type 4. It was a flat 4 air-cooled engine with twin carburetors. The 1.7-liter engine produced 80 horsepower. For comparison, a stock bus 2-liter with low compression was only 70 horsepower. Still, considering the 1600cc Type 1 only made 60 horsepower, that was pretty good. A 914 fuel-injected 2-liter could easily exceed 100 horsepower. In '69, the mid-engine 914 was introduced as a 70 model using the Volkswagen Type 4 80 horsepower fuel-injected engine. And then later, a 2-liter Porsche flat 4 engine was tuned for 100 horsepower in order to replace the 911T flat 6. A 5-speed transmission was used, with a differential swapped around side to side to make it a mid-engine configuration. The 2-liter 914 engine Type 4 debuted in 1973. It was manufactured by VW and sold as a VW Porsche in Europe and a Porsche in the USA. The first 914 model was a 470, and the internal designation changed to 471 in 71 and 472 in 72, and went sequentially until 476 of the 76 model. In '69, the 411 was modified with a new Bosch Jetronic electronic fuel injection system, and that was shared with the mid-engine Porsche 914. And it was launched in '69 also as a 411E for the Volkswagen version. For 1972, the VW bus had the 1700, and that motor had heat exchangers built into the mufflers. The muffler was still the same as a similar year 914, and for 72 and 73, Porsche discontinued the 914 6 in the US that we just talked about. That 2-liter engine was good for 100 horsepower, and some people say that that was underrated. The earlier transmission was based on the 901 Porsche transmission, and then later the 902. However, when placed in the mid-engine configuration, the early version had the shifter at the very back of the transmission, and then in '73 they moved it to the side of the transmission to shorten the shift linkage and improve the shifting of the car. For '73, VW replaced the 411 with a 412, and the engine size increased from 1700 to 1800 cc's. Both cars didn't really sell very well, but the 914 sure did. In '74, the VW bus now had the 1800 motor and kept the VW bus 002 transmission with the 3 ribs on it. All 411 and 412 and Porsche 914 and 911E engines had the dipstick tube on top of the engine next to the breather, and the hole in front for the bus-style dipsticks at the back of the engine was not machined into the case. So it's a good indication of what case that you have, is to look for that dipstick being on top of the engine. And I should mention that the VW bus came out with the Type 4 engine in 1972 and used the 1700cc engine with twin carburetors. It was low compression compared to the 411 or 914 engines, so only produced 65 horsepower. The bus used the same engine again in 1973. The 1973 2-liter 914 T4 engine, Type 4 engine that we talked about earlier, was a special engine in the sense that it was designed by Hans Metzger and he was the architect that designed an engineer that designed the Porsche 911 2-liter flat six engine. And Hans knew that he could take the 914 1.7 liter engine and use the same crankshaft. And what he did was offset grind the rod journals on that crankshaft from 55 millimeters to 50 millimeters in order to obtain a greater stroke of 71 millimeters from the 1700 stroke of 66 millimeters to give it the extra displacement to take it to 2 liters. And he also redesigned the cylinder heads on the car to give them a deep circular Hemi style cylinder combustion chamber, and that meant repositioning the valves with the deeper pockets. The valves could be larger, and so we incorporated larger intake and exhaust valves, and that actually changed the valve geometry. The heads were ported out a lot more as well in order to increase the flow and CFM through the cylinder heads, and the additional porting required extra space internally in the cylinder head, so the intake boss for the intake manifold could only have 3 studs. So in fact, the middle 2 studs were basically amalgamated into a 1 stud arrangement, and there was still the 2 outer studs, so that gave it 3 studs in total to hold the intake manifold on each cylinder head, and that made it what they called a 3-stud head. And the other notable difference was the engine tin. The cylinder tin had the spark plug holes punched out in a different location than the regular 1.7, 1.8 liter tin. That was a very good engine. Like I said earlier, it was rated at 100 horsepower, but a lot of people thought that it was underrated. So not uncommon to see 105 to 110 horsepower out of a stock 2-liter engine. So a very good engine indeed. And the other growth of the engine, the 1.8 liters or 1800 cc. Incidentally, VW called the engines by cc. So, for example, a 1700 or an 1800. And Porsche used a nomenclature of liters. So in the Porsche speak, it was a 1.7 or 1.8 liter engine. And that was actually designated on the cars with like 1.8 liter badges on the 914 at the back of the car, or 2.0 badges on the back of the 914 car. So small little things, little differences there. Yeah, the 1.8 liter is also a great engine. It basically used the same crankshaft, 66 millimeter crank of the 1.7 with slightly different rods. The rods had a smaller balancing pad on it to basically balance out the cylinders, which of course are increased in size from 90 millimeter diameter to 93 to give you the 1.8 liter of the 1800 or Porsche 1.8 liter engine. So of course the Porsche engines were fuel injected, and the bus engines were carbureted, and the 412 engine was fuel injected. When they went to 1.8, that was in the 412 car. Okay, so later on, they used the engine in the 76 912E as well. It was a carryover of the 914 engine, but they actually changed the fuel injection system on the 912E car. And there was some other small changes with the engine, but otherwise it was a carried over 914 Ford 2.0 engine in the 1976 912E model car, which is, I think, one of my favorites. Okay, well, I think that pretty well covers the engine development. Of course, we wanted more development, and the aftermarket did develop the engines because, back in those days, Porsche's moving up in the market with a 911 and discontinued the 912, and it was basically the 912 was replaced by the 924, which was late in coming, and so it disappeared from the offerings. And again, the buses soldiered on with the engine for a number of years in a 2-liter form. I think the 2-liter bus engines came out in 1976, and they started to, the cylinder heads were different. A 2-liter bus cylinder head was much different. It was more the original design cylinder head, not the Porsche style head, for increased performance. So the bus is a low compression cylinder head that was used with much smaller valves. And they also changed the exhaust port to a square exhaust port design from the oval ports that the 914 and the earlier 2-liter and 1.8 and 1.7 liter engines were using an oval port exhaust in the cylinder head, cast into the cylinder head. So later bus heads are not interchangeable due to that reason. Okay, it's also interesting to note the fuel-injected engines use slightly smaller valves because the fuel injection was more refined than the carburetors, and there was a lot of changes in camshafts between a bus cam and a fuel-injected cam and a twin carburetor cam, mainly in the overlap between the intake and the exhaust. There was less overlap on the fuel-injected engines because it was a much more precise system than carburetors. Okay, so there's lots of changes in the cams. I'll be doing a video on the cam changes in the future, so watch out for that. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give us a like and subscribe. We really appreciate that, and thanks for dropping by at the Retro Rockets Garage. So have a great day.